In today's class, we are going to discuss regarding another respiratory infectious diseases among the children, that is Krupp syndrome. Krupp syndrome is otherwise known as laryngotracheobronchitis. As the name indicating, this is an inflammatory disease which usually affecting the larynx, tracheae, and the larger airways, that is bronchi. So we'll see regarding what is Krupp syndrome. So let's see the definition. So Crohn's disease, which is also known as laryngotracheobronchitis, and it's a type of respiratory infection that is usually caused by a virus. And this infection, usually what they lead means, as a part of the inflammatory process, this will be leading to a kind of swelling inside the trachea, and this swelling may interfere with the normal breathing of the individual, and this will be leading to the classic manifestations like the child may be having barking cough, then stridor and hoarseness of the voice, etc. Okay. So now regarding the incidence of the disease. So it is a common infectious disease which will affect up to 15% of the children at some point. And this is most commonly occurring between the age of 6 months and 5 years of old. And sometimes the older children are also getting infected by this disease up to the age of 15. And the disease is more commonly seen among the males than that of the females. And when we speak about the season, the disease is most commonly seen in the autumn season. And before vaccination, it's believed that the disease is mainly caused by diphtheria. And if it is caused by diphtheria, this will be a fatal disease. Okay. And now we'll discuss regarding the various etiological factors responsible for Krupp syndrome. And it is believed that the Krupp syndrome is developed mainly due to viral infection, and sometimes bacteria are also responsible for the development of Krupp. So the most commonly involved viruses are para-influenza virus. So para-influenza virus is a member of the paramyxovirus family, and usually the type 1 and type 2 is responsible for development of Krupp in 75% of the cases. Okay, then other viruses are also responsible. They include influenza A virus, then influenza B, then apart from that, measles virus and adenovirus and respiratory syncytial virus. So these all are the common viral etiology. And when we speak about the bacteria, bacteria are also responsible. They include Staphylococcus aureus and Streptococcus pneumoniae. So these all are the bacterial agents responsible for the development of Krupp disease. Okay, so there are both virus as well as the bacteria. They plays a major role in the development of Krupp syndrome. So moving to the pathophysiology. So this is a graphical representation of the pathophysiology. So as I already said you, the etiology, the para-influenza virus, then RSV virus, adenovirus, and some other bacteria are also responsible for the development of this disease. So during the early winter season as well as the autumn season is the common season where the child will be infected with this disease. So usually these viruses will be affecting the child, and usually the symptom is starting as like an upper respiratory tract infection. Later it will develop into a lower respiratory tract infection, and the disease is affecting the larynx as well as the voice box including the trachea also. So here this will be leading to inflammation of the larynx and trachea. As a result, the air passage through these trachea is getting reduced. So this will be leading to the classic clinical manifestations. Understand? So this is only a graphical representation. Now we'll go in detail. So because of the etiology can be a bacteria or a virus. Okay, so here what will happen means this will be leading to because of the inflammation will lead to swelling of the larynx, trachea, and the large bronchi. So here the infiltration of the white blood cells will occur as a part of the inflammatory process. So this will be leading to swelling of the larynx as well as the trachea. So whenever there is a swelling, what happens? Because of the swelling, usually the edema will develop, and because of this edema, the natural lumen of the trachea will get reduced, and this will be leading to an obstruction, that is usually airway obstruction. So what will happen? So the workload of will increases. So when there is a less air entry, the workload of will increases. So this will be leading to the air has to more and more air has to pass through the narrowed trachea. So this will be leading to stridor. Okay. So the more and more air which is entered will trapped inside the lungs will increases. So as a result, the child has to again take what more breath, including larger lung volumes. Okay, so this will leading to respiratory muscle fatigue and decreased respiratory effectiveness and increased oxygen consumption in the child. If this condition is going untreated or unnoticeable, this may lead to hypoxemia, then carbon dioxide retention, then respiratory distress and respiratory failure. Okay, understand. So these are the common pathophysiology. Then associated clinical manifestations the child will develop. Okay, now we'll see what are the major clinical manifestations. So usually the symptoms will be mild, moderate or severe. So it is based upon the severity of the disease we may classify. So usually the symptoms are starting as like a fever and the child will be having running nose. Usually the child may be having the common cold symptoms and the symptoms that may get worsen at the night and which may last for up to 2 days and followed by the fever and running nose. The child will develop a barking cough. Barking cough in the sense the characteristics of the cough will be like a barking cough, then there will be stridor and hoarseness of the sound and difficulty in breathing, and all these symptoms may get worsen at the night. And the major characteristics feature of this disease is the barking cough. Why it is called barking cough means which will be resembling like a call of the seal or a sea lion. So you have seen the sea lions in the images and all. So how they are making sound. So this cough will be resembling like a sea lion cough. Okay. Then most of the time whenever the child may start to cry, the stridor will get worsened, and this is also get worsened by agitation also. Okay, and sometimes the stridor can be even heard at the rest also. And if it is indicating, or if the child is having severe stridor, which indicating that the child is having a critical narrowing of his airways. Okay. Apart from that, all these symptoms, the child may usually have the symptoms of fever, then the symptoms of common cold, then there will be one more symptom that is the indrawing of the chest wall. So whenever you see the child's chest walls are gone inside, so that is known as Hoover sign. So this is a most common sign. If you do the physical examination of the child with Krupp syndrome, you can find out. Okay, clear. So these all are the common manifestations visible in a child with the Krupp syndrome. So coming to the diagnostic method, how we can diagnose the condition. So diagnosis is mainly on the history. So in the history, a recent history will be collected from the parents regarding the traveling, then play, their area where they live, and regarding any air pollution and all will be collected. Then physical examination is another thing usually the physicians will do. So in the physical examination, the characteristics clinical features like the barking cough, then stridor, then indrawing of the chest, that is Hoover sign, everything will be assessed. Then apart from that, the clinical manifestation, as I already said you, the stridor, then chest wall retraction, any signs of cyanosis is evaluated. Then blood investigations are carried out, usually to identify any infectious like sepsis and all to identify any viral entry. Okay. Then an esophageal swab is sent to identify the organism to distinguish between it is a bacterial or a viral infection. The same time, blood also sent for culture. The nasopharyngeal swab also sent for the culture. Then one of the most common diagnostic method usually the physicians do in case of a Krupp syndrome is a frontal X-ray of the neck. So X-ray examination is carried out and this will show a characteristics narrowing of the trachea. So as I said you, because of the swelling, the trachea will be very much narrow. So here if the child undergo a chest X-ray, in the chest X-ray it will be very clear that there will be a narrowed trachea that is known as steeple sign. Okay, so here I have attached an image. You can see the image and so because of the subglottic stenosis, so the narrowing of the trachea will be resembling like a steeple in shape. Okay, so this steeple sign if it is present in the X-ray, chest X-ray, which is suggestive of the diagnosis. So diagnosis can be made very easily with the help of a frontal neck X-ray. Okay, so all the basic informations are collected, then blood investigations are carried out, then clinical manifestations are evaluated, and apart from that, a frontal X-ray also taken to identify the steeple sign and the presence of steeple sign suggestive of group syndrome. Okay, so I think you got an idea regarding the diagnostic methods. So coming to the therapeutic management, so usually the child with the group syndrome they will be kept calm as possible because I already said you if they start to cry or any kind of agitation that can aggravate the stridor. Okay, so always maintain the oxygen saturation of the child because the child may be having less oxygen. Increased oxygen demand will be there and there will be decreased oxygen supply. So the saturation has to be maintained then it should if any child with the saturation which is less than 92 percentage has to be supplied with the supplemental oxygen and in case of severe group the child need to be admitted. Then steroids can be given and usually epinephrine is given as the drug of choice. So use of steroids. So usually corticosteroids are given as the drug of choice. So they have got very what effective outcome in the children with the severity of croup. So the significant relief is usually seen if we administer the steroids immediately 2 hours after the administration. Either we can give it by injections or by inhalation. A single dose is usually required, and usually the drug of choice we give as steroid is dexamethasone for the children. So the dexamethasone 0.15, zero point 0.3 and zero point 0.6 mg per kg are available. So this will be given to the child either as an injection or as an inhalation. Okay, so steroids they have got an anti-inflammatory effect. So within 2 hours after the administration, their work will start, and this will help to provide a escape from the manifestations. Coming to next drug that is epinephrine. So this is also a common drug usually give. So this can be given as like a nebulization. So moderate to severe croup may be improved with the nebulized epinephrine. So usually its effect may last within 10 to 30 minutes. So after administration within 10 to 30 minutes the child may be having reduction in the symptoms and this may last only up to 2 hours. Okay, and if the condition remain improved for 2 to 4 hours after the epinephrine treatment and there is no complication, the child can be sent home. There is no need of any admission and all, we can send the child to home. So coming to the major aspect that is regarding the nursing management. So in the nursing management, the nurse has to assess the general status of the child. At the same time, she need to assess the airway because they will be narrowing of the airway. So provide a comfortable position at the same time, maintain the airway and assess the ABG value to identify the arterial blood gases. So we should know regarding is there any carbon dioxide retention is there or if the child is developing any kind of acidosis we need to identify. For that ABG values has to be monitored. At the same time vital signs need to be monitored. Then with the help of a pulse oximetry the oxygen saturation can be constantly monitored. At the same time administer cool and humidified oxygen to the child. And in order to improve the oxygenation, the child may be preferred to place in an upright position, either a semi-volus or a high volus position. So that's the nurse's responsibility. Then, most of the time, the child may refuse for food. So, frequent diet has to be provided because fatigue need to be avoided. Because of the increased respiratory demand and increased respiratory muscles use, the child may be having the manifestations of fatigue. So, in order to avoid fatigue, frequent diet. Then fluid has to be administered. For babies, breast milk is best one. So if breast milk is not available or if the mother is not capable to provide breast milk, formula feed can be given. Then the same time for the older children, soup, then smashed potatoes can be given. Okay. Then next is regarding the family education. So that is one of the important matter the nurse has to consider. So educate the family regarding the importance of vaccinations against diphtheria, influenza, etc. The next one is regarding controlling the allergens. That is also an important thing has to be taught to the family members. Okay, so these all are regarding the medical, surgical, sorry, medical, nursing, and other management of this group syndrome. So I think it's clear for you. So thank you. So please go through the content and learn.